Hi, everyone. It's Kristan Hawkins, and welcome to this special What's Going On Capitol Hill Facebook update. There is so much happening today on Capitol Hill that I thought it best to come live to kind of explain it all to you because there's so much going on both in the House and in the Senate. And these are crucial hearings, crucial votes that are going to for many, many years, determined the fate of millions of lives and truly the fate of our movement and the mission that we seek to accomplish, which is to abolish abortion. So joining me today, I've got Christy Hamrick. Christy is our chief spokesperson, policy analyst at Students for Life. And she has been on the phone, on the conference calls with all things Capitol Hill today. And I stepped away from my computer for just a little bit to do some work. And I came back to a flurry of text messages of everything that was happening. If you watch C-SPAN, today is the day to watch C-SPAN, my friends. But I asked Christy to get on with me to give us this pro-life Capitol Hill update. So welcome, Christy.
Thanks so much for having me, Kristan. I know it's like you think you're going to have a peaceful day. Sorry, not at all. Not one vote, not two vote, but three, but four, but five.
Please don't jinx us.
That's right. But wait, there's more.
There's more. So, I mean, there's so much going on. I know we've been trying to send out, email and text message alerts since the Democrats took power of the U.S. Senate in the beginning of January because of all that's going on. But there's three things I know that are coming down the pike today that pro-life activists, regardless of what state you live in, need to be aware of. So the first, let's start on the House side. Okay. So the House today is going to vote on the ERA. The ERA is called, it's the Equal Rights Amendment. We call it the Everything Related to Abortion Act. This is that amendment that was proposed by actually a pro-life feminist, Alice Paul. And the big push was the second wave of feminism in the 70s. It was almost ratified by the states, but it became 3 states short, missed its time limit twice to get ratified in Constitution, meaning it's dead. What the House Democrats are attempting to do today, I believe, is they're taking a vote and they're going to say that even though the ERA time limit expired before I was born in 1982, that it doesn't matter. That the 3 states ratified it a couple years ago, therefore the time limit was arbitrary. And this is nonsense if you think about it, because yes, they got 3 extra states to ratify, but then other states actually went back and rescinded the ratification when they found out what we know, which is the ERA is not about equal rights for women. It's about enshrining abortion, taxpayer-funded abortion in their Constitution. So Christy, what did I get wrong here from this vote?
No, you got everything right. And here's one way to think about it. 100 years ago, when the Equal Rights Amendment was first discussed, it sounded like a great idea that we're not going to have discrimination based on sex. And that's important because it says sex. So 100 years ago, they invent the ERA, they invent baseball. There's going to be 9 innings. At the end of 9 innings, the game is over. What the ERA proponents are saying is that we want to vote for a 10th inning. The game's over. We actually lost twice. They lost when they didn't get anybody to bring it forward 100 years ago. When they brought it forward in the 70s, they couldn't get to game over with enough points to win, enough states to win. They got an extension on that, which a lot of people think is illegal, but they did get an extension, and they still couldn't get enough points to win. I mean, if it was baseball, if it was basketball, if it was anything else, the buzzer rings, it's over, and you would have to deal with that fact. And in fact, a federal judge just a couple of weeks ago said the exact same thing. You missed your deadlines, and those deadlines are legal. So all these abortion advocates in the House today are going to argue that there's no limit on equality. Well, that's a buzzword. That's not a legal definition. So they're going to come back today to say they should have an extension on the deadline because they want one. Because that's the way the world works. You want one, so you get it.
As pro-lifers, equality, this is what we do every day, right? We fight for equality as pro-lifers. We say that there's no fundamental difference between, the zygote in the womb, the embryo that you once were, from the human you are today. You are equal, and every human being is equal. So what is so bad about the ERA?
What's bad about the ERA? And it's a great question, Kristan. Number one, the ERA has been used to advance abortion. NARAL, the National Organization for Women, Planned Parenthood, et al. Is very directly arguing through their coalitions in favor of the ERA that with an ERA, you can wipe out any pro-life laws, you can call abortion a right, and that will force their full agenda, and it will get rid of all pro-life laws, like another Roe v. Wade, another Roe v.
And they don't
Wade.
have to worry then about Roe v. Wade being reversed because it's crappy law then.
That's right. Roe v. Wade's going to fall. We all know that. It's a terrible law. Everybody thought so at the time. So they've been propping up this house on fire all this time. So this is a way for them to actually get abortion into the Constitution. And they're very direct about that. It's not even subtle. And in fact, in states like New Mexico that has state ERAs, it's been found that requires abortion through all 9 months and full funding, taxpayer funding of abortion. So we know that the ERA is about abortion, but here's the thing. This is another way that it hurts women. The ERA says, again, no discrimination based on sex. What does that mean? You know, sex in today's legal culture is very confusing. And if you don't believe me, go to the Senate side today on the Equality Act, where witnesses said they weren't sure how many sexes they were, but they knew there was more than 2. And that is the problem, because what we do is the ERA on the House side jams sex into the Constitution. And then we pass the Equality Act, which says sex is meaningless. It's like silly putty. It fits anywhere that you want to put it. So fundamentally, that will attack laws that protect women, like the Pregnancy Non-Discrimination Act, like the Civil Rights Acts related to women in the workplace, because then you can't have a law that allows anything to separate out the sexes. So for example, Abigail Shrier, brilliant journalist from the Wall Street Journal, and has been writing about this, has been talking about how the ERA and the Equality Act, it's like the death of women's sports, but how without having decided, for example, that you were transgender or had gender dysphoria or anything like that, you could say, I'm a woman, and go anywhere that women go, and here's where that matters. There was a situation in a jail recently where a bunch of men said they were women, and they were put in with women, and then women were raped. Because there was no way to say, once someone said they were a woman, there was no way to say that they weren't, because it's all about identification. So then any law to protect women who are physically smaller and weaker were irrelevant. So it's the end of sports. Right now, in one of the states that are allowing transgender boys to play in women's sports, 13 of 14 state championships are now held by women. They made the point that the Serena Williams, the brilliant tennis player, tried to challenge the 200th best male player in the country and lost. That the top male weightlifter can lift 1,100 pounds and the top female weightlifter in the world can lift 600 pounds.
Wow.
And while that's way more than I can lift, the point really is that women and men are physically different. And if we go head to head and put biological men in women's sports, biological men in prisons, biological men in women's domestic violence shelters, that biological women can feel threatened. Their sports will basically go away forever.
Why should pro-lifers be, I mean, I'm concerned as a mom
Right.
of a little girl, especially about the Equality Act, but why should pro-lifers care about the Equality Act?
Because then abortion, they are defining the Equality Act, and it's not just pro-lifers. Let me take a step back. Pro-lifers and people of faith should care, and this is why. They say that access to medical care is a matter of non-discrimination. So naturally, in the fine print, medical care is defined as anything that affects someone sexually, AKA we get to abortion. So I should be able to have access to any abortion vendor, any abortion procedure, any procedure related to sex, again, and sex is defined however you wish to define it. So abortion, taxpayer funding abortion, that would be forced through. But here's what's scary about the Equality Act. It's not just that it would say that getting an abortion is your right as a matter, so that you're not going to be discriminated against. It says that, and I'm quoting one of the witnesses, there will be no, this is not my word, shield of faith to prevent you from participating in this, because the Equality Act specifically attacks conscience rights. So, for example, Senator Lindsey Graham asked in the hearing, does that mean the Catholic Church could be sued because they only allow men to be priests? And the answer was yes. But doctors, pro-life doctors who did not want to do abortions, could they say, I have a conscience problem, I really struggle morally with killing preborn life? Irrelevant, because there would be no religious shield against anything that the Equality Act decides is necessary for equality. And trust me, abortion is spelled out.
And it basically is saying that the male body is the normative and
Correct.
should be the normative. That there's really something wrong with you as a female, and that you're only going to have full equality unless you have taxpayer funded access to a special surgery to end the life of your child. Right. That's the only way you'll be equal to men.
And you will have no right to, you will be forced to pay for it, and you will have no right as a doctor. And I've talked to pro-life doctors, talking about how in medical schools across the country, I mean, then, so I have a daughter who's applying to medical school as we speak. Wouldn't she, out of fear that she might be forced to do abortions, decide not to become an OB-GYN? And to be honest, that's her dream right now, is to become an OB-GYN, to deliver babies. So kind of excited about that. But if you're going to be forced to do abortions, is that the specialty that you're going to pick? I mean, we are really saying there will be no pro-life doctors in America. Everybody has to be just as committed to killing babies as they are to bringing them in the world. That's illogical, and that's offensive both.
Yeah. So just so for everyone who's listening, ERA is going to be voted on today in the House. We expect it to pass because the Democrats have said they're going to vote in lockstep with this. And Democrats have a slim majority in the House. So every single Democratic member of the House is expected to vote, I believe, for ERA, even if they call themselves pro-life. What happens to ERA after that?
Well, then it'll make its journey to the Senate.
Okay.
And that gets us really to one of the third things.
And that's why we're at the Equality Act today is in the Senate, because Equality Act already passed the House.
That's right.
Every single Democrat voted for it. I think a couple of Republicans, and that's why it's at the Senate, which before ERA and Equality Act already passed in the previous Congress. But because Republicans, pro-lifers, had control of the Senate, they never came to the floor for the vote. Now, because of the outcome of the Georgia elections, which we were very involved in and knocked on 70,000 doors, but sadly it didn't result in a victory. Now, because of that, these bills, ERA, ratification, Equality Act, are going to be coming to the floor of the Senate for the vote. And Chuck Schumer, who is a 100% pro-abortion ideologue, has promised votes on them. And this is the third point we need to talk about today, which is the filibuster, and why this filibuster, this procedural thing, matters so much to save our republic and save millions of lives. Tell me what's going on.
Well, in the Constitution, and we all have to go back to civics into school if they still teach that, God help us.
They don't.
Exactly. But
Hawkins Learning Academy, homeschool does.
That's right. Homeschool are us. So the House was designed to be a place with a highly raucous debate, where people are elected every 2 years, and you're going to have a real sense of the personality of the country and of really what's being discussed now. It was designed, you might say, as the Twitter of politics. It was going to be faster and quicker. But the Senate was supposed to have more deliberate debate. It's supposed to be more bipartisan, and you were elected for 6-year terms. It was supposed to slow everything down. Mm-hmm. This way, you both understood that the country was changing. We were going to hear everybody's voices, but we weren't going to go crazy. We were going to make it deliberative. The Senate was to be a gentlemanly or womanly deliberative body. So here we are today, where the Senate. So what that gets us to the filibuster, where in general you need 60 votes to pass most things, and that requires bipartisanship because you need
it's 50 votes to pass, but you need 60 to invoke cloture, right? The end of the debate.
You can get cloture, I believe, without 60. It's 60 to pass.
Okay.
Yeah. So the whole point is that it requires bipartisan effort. Just last night, President Biden was talking with George Stephanopoulos on ABC, saying that he now supported a talking filibuster, where we're going to have a Mr. Smith goes to Washington requirement that you talk till you drop, and that's the only way that you could object to anything. Mm-hmm. If they get rid of the filibuster rule and allow a straight majority vote on the crazy stuff, HR 1, the destruction of our elections, getting rid of the constitutional provisions that states handle elections, and people in Washington can write any rules that they want. I mean, it's crazy, not to mention attacking the free speech rights of us, Kristan, at the C4. HR 1, HR 5, the Equality Act, which we were just talking about, rewriting sex. ERA, rewriting the constitutional provisions for how we pass and add things to our Constitution. Those are three huge, crazy things. If they get rid of the filibuster, then the Senate can force all this through. And I have to give a real shout out to Senator Mitch McConnell, who was saying, if you do that to us, it's fair game to come back. You know, it is fair game to come back and then get rid of your stuff and put forward some of ours.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the point of the Senate at all. But when Biden last night gave that interview, that's a big deal. And it signals that they're continuing to find ways to pressure Kyrsten Sinema in Arizona and Senator Joe Manchin in West Virginia, where you're from originally, Kristan, to drop the filibuster.
Yeah, so the filibuster is, if anybody remembers in history, when they were talking about the Civil Rights Act, there was this epic filibuster of the Civil Rights Act. And Robert C. Byrd, the senator from West Virginia, was on the floor, you know, a Democrat. All the Democrats filibustered the Civil Rights Act. And so it was, we can kind of remember that from history, but it's important because it says that you need 60 votes to end the debate to move on to the vote on whatever bill it is. And it's been used, especially in past years, where if a senator says, I'm going to filibuster, they just, you know, they say, well, we can't take this to the vote. That's why as pro-lifers, we got very, I guess you could say, agitated with the pro-life Senate, because we never could defund Planned Parenthood. Yes, we had 50 votes to defund Planned Parenthood. I think we got at one point got up to about 52 votes to defund Planned Parenthood, but we couldn't get the 60 votes we needed to defund Planned Parenthood, which would break a Senate filibuster. That is why a lot of people are like, why would you vote for Republicans? They always let you down. They had control of the Senate. They didn't do anything. Those are people who are just expressing their ignorance of the actual process of Washington, D.C., because if you want anything done in the U.S. Senate, you have to get 60 votes, which is why this past election cycle was so critical. It was so frustrating to hear so many people say, you know, we had pro-life control of the Senate. We couldn't get all these things done. We couldn't get Paying Capable or Born Alive or defund Planned Parenthood. The reason we couldn't get those things done, despite the fact that we had a pro-life Senate, is because we didn't have 60 votes to stop a filibuster. So what they're talking about is getting rid of this procedural move, and everything will be a straight up and down majority vote, which, as you all know, the Democrats control the U.S. Senate but by one vote. So HR 5, what Christy mentioned, is the Equality Act. We call it the Inequality Act. That's already at the Senate. Today was the first hearing. ERA ratification, creating that 10th inning, that is, you know, being voted on today in the House. It will advance to the Senate. There's a lot of things. HR 1, the For the People Act, we call it For the Corrupt Politicians Act, which will basically hamstring, as Christy mentioned, groups like ours from even talking or even uttering the name of an elected official that could potentially publicly out every single supporter of a conservative or pro-life or faith-based ministry and subject them to ridicule, protest at their place of business, their homes. That is also at the Senate. These are all things that require a filibuster. Thankfully, Senator Joe Manchin has said, no, we need to keep the filibuster. And he has, you know, comes from a pro-life state. He says he's pro-life. Kyrsten Sinema, who's not pro-life from Arizona, has said she wants to keep it. But now, you know, President Biden, Chuck Schumer have been weighing on them to kind of pressure them to alter this filibuster. If they get rid of the filibuster, this means they can pack the Supreme Court. This is not an empty threat from AOC. They know exactly what we know, which is what Christy said earlier. Roe versus Wade is on the chopping block. They want to get at least 2 more Supreme Court justices added, so they do not have a conservative majority, that they'll have a liberal majority, pro-abortion majority. They want to make Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. states, not because they care about the people of Washington, D.C. or Puerto Rico, but because they want 4 pro-abortion Senate seats to ensure that Republicans and pro-lifers never have control of the U.S. Senate ever again. This is exactly what we're talking about. So this is critical today that this filibuster remain in place. This is why we've been in West Virginia encouraging Senator Manchin to keep his promise to not betray the American people, people. It's very sad that basically the fate of our republic as we know it, our constitutional republic, is coming down to the hands of one or two senators who I'm sure are loving it. There's also today, Christy, in the Senate, there was just a cloture and vote to end the debate on the nomination and confirmation of Xavier Becerra to head up HHS. This is a man who, as Attorney General of California, in midst of the COVID crisis, while everyone was trying to get valuable PPE to doctors and medical professionals, was busy gathering up 20 AGs across the country to sue the FDA to force them to allow Planned Parenthood to dispense the abortion pill without ever seeing a woman in clinic to make sure she was even pregnant before she took an abortion pill. That's what the man's doing. He has no experience in healthcare beyond suing nuns and pregnancy centers to force them to distribute or pay for abortions. That's the man's extent of his healthcare experience. And in a couple hours, they're going to vote. And even the filibuster won't even save us on this vote because of past.
Right, because you don't need the filibuster, the 60 vote margin, you don't need for everything. This, for example, is a cabinet appointment. So if they just get a majority, they can win. But Kristan, you couldn't be more right about this guy. Here's what's so crazy about it. In the middle of a pandemic, and we all are in a pandemic, right? So in the middle of a pandemic, we're going to put an activist lawyer with no healthcare experience of any kind in charge of the nation's healthcare. His healthcare experience is suing doctors, not managing doctors, not managing healthcare. And he has been in favor of partial birth abortion, allowing children to be almost born and then killed in the womb. In the birth canal. He has been in favor of getting rid of the health and safety standards for chemical abortion pills. And here's the thing to everybody listening. Don't let anybody fool you that it's a Tic Tac or an aspirin. These things cause tremendous bleeding. Women have died. They've gotten infection. They've lost their ability to ever have future children because they want to hand these out without screening. And there are things like your blood type. Your blood type is a factor in whether you can ever have another child. Come to Students for Life. This is chemical abortion. And learn more. It's scary. And they want to just hand these pills out like candy and pretend like it's no big deal. Oh, it's just a slightly heavy period. And again, come to This is Chemical Abortion and learn how horrible it is. But Xavier Becerra not only is the wrong person to lead HHS, he was pressuring the FDA, the doctors at the FDA, to get rid of medical standards while he was AG, Attorney General of California. What's he going to do as their boss? I mean, it's just unbelievable that.
What the New York Times call him, the abortion attack dog.
Yep, they called him the anti-Trump attack dog, an anti-Trump attack dog, litigating attack dog. Yeah. McConnell calls him famously partisan.
So what can everyone do? So if everyone is riled up as I am right now, I was pretty sleepy starting this, but now I'm like angry and want to call some people. So what do we need to do right now if you're pro-life? You need to call your House of Representatives member and tell them to vote right now, today, no on ERA.
That's
you
right.
need to call your 2 U.S. senators and you need to tell them to vote no on the Equality Act, no on the ERA, the Everything Related Abortion Act, no on the confirmation of Xavier Becerra, and keep the Senate filibuster. Did I get all those action items right?
Absolutely. You know, the filibuster is huge. The filibuster is the only way to maintain a little freaking sanity right now up at Capitol Hill. You know, otherwise, it was funny. There were commentators joking. There are some unicameral systems of government where it's just one loud body and they're all yelling at each other. Without the filibuster, that's where we're headed. And it's really unfortunate, but absolutely, Kristan, your list is perfectly right. Support the filibuster and no on HR 1, HR 5, extending the ERA deadline, and certainly not on putting a guy who's lawsuit happy into HHS. No on Becerra.
So there you go, pro-lifers. There are your talking points. If you do not know the phone numbers of your U.S. senators or House of Representative members, which I encourage you to get their numbers and put it in your cell phone because you're going to be calling them a lot in the next couple of months, go to house.gov or go to senate.gov. You can also go to studentsforlifeaction.org and click Action Center. We have a lot of action alerts. You can click the action you want to take, call my center, email my center. Our system will actually automatically connect you. We'll call your phone instantly and connect you to your U.S. Senator's office in in Washington, D.C. So you just go to studentsforlifeaction.org, click at the top where it says Action Center, and it'll take you right to our digital action center, and you can start calling them. But be prepared to fight. We are certainly prepared to fight in the pro-life generation, because I believe we are closer than ever before. That is why we're seeing the abortion industry breathe its last gasps, trying to do everything they can and be as radical as they've ever been before to ensure that abortion and the quote unquote right to abortion doesn't go away. So we can be victorious, but we have to stand up and we have to fight and we have to be louder than we've ever been before. And that's why you guys come in, and that's where we need you guys. Thank you guys.